Hello everybody, my name is Dusty and welcome to my channel. Today, well actually last night, I asked you guys what you wanted to see, a Paul Cafaro video done by whatever, or the African Clawed Frog video, and I just kind of decided that I want to do the African Clawed Frog video because I feel like a lot of people are now thinking this channel is all going to be negative, which it's not. I don't want it to be negative and I don't want just negative content to be put out into the world, so I thought today would be a perfect opportunity to talk about African Clawed Frogs. If you're not familiar with African Clawed Frogs, they are the frogs that I think are the most misunderstood animal that you can virtually buy anywhere. When you're working in a pet store, a lot of the times the most common question you get is, I have this frog, what do I feed it? And I think that's a common question because these types of frogs are so often just given away, whether they're in classrooms or grow-a-frog kits. You get these frogs so readily available, but there isn't so much information on them. In fact, my African Clawed Frog video that I made last year, I think tends to be one of the biggest resources on this platform for African Clawed Frogs. I get comments about it all the time. I do have African Clawed Frogs in my care. I have 3 of them right now, Big Mama included. But as a creator on the platform, I tend to watch way too many videos, and one of the most commonly searched videos I look for are African Clawed Frog videos. Primarily because I want to see what information is being put out into the world and how I can adapt my content to kind of meet the needs and the questions that people have about these animals. While perusing through the African Clawed Frog content, I came across a creator, a very small creator. I don't actually think they make videos every week like I do. I think they only have done a couple of videos, mostly about their African Clawed Frog. And the main video that I watched the first couple of minutes on is how she realized she had a frog that she didn't know she had. And I think that for a lot of people is how they got into keeping African Clawed Frogs. African Clawed Frogs are actually illegal in 11 states and throughout much of the world just because they're deemed an invasive species. These frogs are oftentimes confused with African dwarf frogs, and they get put into your fish tank, they devour everything, and I mean absolutely everything in sight. So I think these frogs have a really big misconception about them, and so I'm here to try to alter that opinion and try to get more people interested in these wonderful creatures. So without further ado, let's jump into the video and kind of watch how she kind of fixes up her African Clawed Frog care, and we'll kind of go through her story with that. So I'll see you in the video. Alright guys, so before we actually jump into the video, I just want to say that I heard your comments about my audio problems, so I think I fixed it. I'm recording on 2 separate programs, and I'll just kind of put them together, so let me know what you think. But for right now, let's jump into this video. It's by a creator called The Modern Hermit. It's titled, I've been taking care of my African Clawed Frog for years, and it's called Grow a Frog Kit. So it turns out I was taking care of my African Clawed Frog all wrong for 10 years. Don't worry, changes are on their way. Subscribe for more upgrades. So she has 26 subscribers, and we'll take a look at this video. Love this intro. It's great.
Prime example of the modern hermit. I've been taking completely wrong care of my African Clawed Frog for around 10 years now.
Now, the first thing I noticed, I know a lot of people who are having problems with me pausing all the time, but this enclosure I have seen a lot of when I've been doing research for Grow Frog Kits, because I've been looking into getting one and kind of following their care and seeing if I could do it. But this is a huge part of one of the enclosures that I've seen through Grow a Frog.
And I'm now just finding out about the modern way you should actually care for them. So I originally got my frog around 10 years ago for my birthday from the brand called Grow a Frog. This is their recommended.
So African Clawed Frogs, a part of the misconception is that they don't live very long. African Clawed Frogs can live for up to 15 years. Big Mama is 8. I rescued her from a person who brought him into Petco. That's a whole nother story. I'll probably tag it along in this. But while I was looking for Grow a Frog kits, they said that the lifespan could be cut short and that you should be expecting of that. No. If you take care of it right, they should live for 15 years, 10 to 15 years, around there. They are vigorous eaters. They are extremely hardy. There's usually nothing you can do wrong, which is why people sell them for these Grow Frog kits, because they are so extremely hardy. They can outlast pretty much everything you have.
Tank of use, this little tiny thing. You can get bigger ones, but they say it's fine for even 2 frogs. So
no,
as you can tell, it's pretty tiny. And if you can see the actual frog, he's pretty big.
Yes,
he
they
really
are.
needs a bigger tank, more hiding spots, more plants, better diet, all this stuff. And you know what? Maybe some people think the Grow a Frog method of caring for them is perfectly fine, but now that I'm doing my research,
but it's not. The grow frog people probably think it's fine because they'll send you replacement after replacement for more than it costs to buy them, but it is not okay.
Research on how people keep their African clawed frogs. I think this is completely wrong and it's completely unfair to the frog. I read Grow Frog's care guide. I read this thing like front to back several times before I actually got any of the frogs. I did have 2 at one point. The other one died several years back and I'm just left with this one. I could have sworn this book said that these frogs were only grown in their laboratory and that it was like its only species, so I was figuring no one else sold them, so this was like the one way you take care of them because there's only one place to actually get them from, if that makes any sense. Turns out this is any normal African clawed frog, and I'm not complaining about that because I want to give him a better life.
Fun fact about African clawed frogs, I've done a lot of research on them because I feel like I'm a resource for a lot of people when it comes to African clawed frogs. They're my favorite animal. I love taking care of them, which is why I put a lot of work into caring for them. African clawed frogs were actually used a while back as one of the first species to be cloned. They used them because they were so easily clonable. So they actually have become illegal in many states because of how invasive they are. Grow a Frog has taken advantage of how hardy they are and have been selling them in these kits that are really basically inhumane for these animals. They deserve a lot more space. I'd say that's probably about 2.5 gallons, maybe to 4 at the most. One African clawed frog should have about 10 gallons, and then after that, it's kind of up to your discretion, to be completely honest. I had 2 in a 10-gallon tank, and they were perfectly fine. Now I have 3 in a 40, and I'm probably going to add in a couple more. So it's kind of up to your discretion on how you take care of them. There's not too many care guides out there that can really help you with that, but as long as you can keep up with the water changes, because they are messy animals, and you have a filter on their tank, usually they're okay.
If I want to upgrade his tank and make him happy for the rest of his life, because I have been not so great to him for the past few years, unfortunately.
So with this girl, though, I feel really bad for her because it's not her fault. Obviously, she's doing something right because he's still alive, but that's what she was told, and that's what she chose to believe, and it's not like she had any other option. It made her believe that this was the only information you could get on them, and well, I mean, she could have done a little bit more research. She is doing nothing wrong here. She just was following the instructions that were given to her, and in most circumstances, I think the average person would do the exact same thing. The only difference here, though, and I'll make this clear, is that she's actually realizing she did something wrong, and she wants to change it. So a lot of props to the modern hermit for doing this.
But yeah, that's pretty much why you need to do your research on your pets.
Absolutely.
So in the upcoming weeks, I'm planning on moving him into a 10-gallon tank that I have sitting around. I'm also going to get him some live plants, some hiding spots, maybe get him a friend in the future, I don't know. But I plan on keeping you guys updated with this upgrade. To any Grow a Frog owners out there, I would highly, highly recommend doing your research a little bit more. These are just your typical African clawed frog, even though you might think that it's a special species of frog grown only by Grow a Frog. That's not true. They're just African clawed frogs. Maybe slightly smaller than ones you get from the pet store, but they are.
So I think the reason why they might be slightly smaller than your average frog, African clawed frog you get from the pet store, is because of the food they're feeding them. I was doing my research for Grow a Frog because I am going to be purchasing a Grow a Frog kit in the future. I realized that the food they're feeding them are the African dwarf frog pellets. Now these can be used for tadpoles, that's fine, but once they get older they have to change their diet, and usually people don't. I feed mine turtle pellets. That seems to be the best thing for them. Shrimp, you can give them worms, you can give them earthworms, waxworms, mealworms, superworms. You feed them anything, they'll most likely eat it. I give mine minnows. And I have a feeling that hers might be a little smaller. One, because it looks like a male to me. I can't tell unless I see the pads on its forearm, but it looks like a male to me. It also seems that she is feeding the Grow a Frog food. So that would be the only suggestion, besides moving them to a 10-gallon tank, I would give her, is switch up the food, because the food most likely isn't the most nutritional thing for them.
Are just your typical African clawed frog, and this is not the way to take care of them. So yeah, I plan on upgrading him. I feel awful for the way I've been housing him for the past decade. They can live around 15 to 20 years. So hopefully if I upgrade his tank, he'll have another happy 10 years of life with me. Actually, absolutely. I think it's a she, but I tend to call all animals he's. I don't know. All right,
Actually, fun fact about African clawed frogs, you can tell if they're a male or a female. One, if they croak, they're a male. And two, most of the times the males will grow black pads on their forearms. And they grow the black pads so they can grip onto the female. So you'll know it's a male by that.
That's it for this video. Pretty short and to the point. Just wanted to give you guys kind of an update what's happening with my frog. Actually, most of you probably didn't even know I had a frog. I don't even know if people who follow my main channel know I have a frog. It's just not a very common thing I say. I'm really excited. I hope you guys are too, to see his upgraded tank coming soon. It's gonna be so cool and so like natural.
And she actually already posted the upgraded, so we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the upgraded one. Alright, so this is her updated enclosure. I love this intro. I could get into it.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Modern Hermit. My name is Lainey.
The tank looks bigger
this
than the 10-gallon.
On the proper way to care for your
It's just
pets.
'cause their heads
So my
in the way.
African clawed frog's tank is finally
that's
here.
10-gallon.
It's new and improved, and I think he's enjoying it. It's much bigger, and he just really seems to like it. He's got a lot of.
So, a fun tip with African clawed frogs. The reason why I think a lot of people leave this gap of air, I have it in mind too, if you notice, it's only about filled up halfway, is one, because they like to jump, right? So I don't mind jumping up into the cover. And plus, mine doesn't really have a cover on it right now because I have to get another 40-gallon cover. But when they jump, they knock themselves into the cover, and I just don't want mine to get hurt. And I think a lot of people notice that.
Places to hide. If you watched my last video, I was telling you how I was been taking care of my frog wrong for almost a decade now. So I finally got his tank up to par, and he seems to be really enjoying it. And today I'm going to be sharing with you guys the journey and how I put this tank together. He's currently hiding right now because he's very shy. He doesn't really like me that much. And he's in a very contorted, odd hiding position right now. That's how desperate he is to get away from me. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the video.
So once we watch her video, I'll show you my African clawed frogs and their current enclosure.
So first things first, I pretty much got this 10-gallon glass tank. I set it up on our piano. Once I got it onto the actual piano here in its new place, I went ahead and put in the substrate. So for substrate, I originally was going to do sand and then also some of this gravel stuff that is from the Grow a Frog kit for their setup of their little tanks. You will see later in the video that I ended up just using the gravel, this green gravel that came from the Grow a Frog kit. I would not recommend using.
The thing about gravel and sand is this: I wouldn't put an African clawed frog on the gravel or the sand, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, because they are so messy and because they love to dig, they're just gonna mess up all that sand right away. Number two, when they swim around, they're looking for food. They just take their hands and kind of shove it into their mouth. If they're going around your bottom of your tank and they're shoving sand into their mouth, they're very clumsy. They're not going to spit it out, so they're just going to keep inhaling it and eating it. I would definitely just take the sand out. The sand makes the water very cloudy, and it will never settle with the frog kicking it up every day. Yeah, and even with the gravel, though, I wouldn't put gravel in bare bottom, or you can take Repti-Carpet and put that in the bottom and just leave it like that.
Using sand, I would recommend just this kind of gravel or a bare bottom tank. Once I had the substrate ready, I went ahead and started getting my driftwood ready. So in the description below, I will leave a link that I followed for making aquarium friendly driftwood. I pretty much found this wood down at my local park by the creek, no pesticides in the area or anything. I took home the driftwood and I went outside and sprayed it down with a hose. I used the jet settings so that I could get all the extra bugs and dirt out because I didn't want that in my tank. Once I was done spraying down all the driftwood, I went ahead and put those on a cookie sheet and I put those into the oven for I think 15 to 20 minutes on the lowest setting my oven goes on, which I believe is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Once I was done sanitizing it in the oven, I went ahead and put it into the tank. Once I placed the driftwood into the tank, I went ahead and filled the tank up with some dechlorinated water. I did have to put some rocks on the driftwood to keep it from floating up to the top. I did this to get the driftwood soaking, hopefully so that the water would absorb into it and it wouldn't float, but that actually didn't end up working. I just still have rocks on it to keep it from floating. So that was pretty much the end of my first day of construction.
That would, though.
Hello Hello everyone, it's now day 2 of construction for my African clawed frogs tank. So here's what's happening. Currently this is the tank. It's just exactly how I left it yesterday. It's still cloudy.
Murky.
The sand is taking its sweet lifetime to settle into the ground.
If you had a filter,
you
it
can
would
see
go
that the
faster.
2 rocks are still on the driftwood, holding it down. Here in a little bit we're going to see
That's
if I
gonna
can
take a
take those
while.
off or not. So I
No, it
just
might
got
take
back
days.
from PetSmart. I bought 3 things which I'll show you in a little bit, which are all for the tank. But first I wanted to tell you guys about my water. So PetSmart, at least the one near me, does free water testing.
Petco
So
too.
if you bring in your water, they'll test your pH levels, your nitrates, your ammonia levels, all that. And they give you this fancy report paper, which is really nice because it tells you all about your water and what you need to do to fix it. So as you can see from this report, my
So the
ammonia...
thing about these water testing, I don't trust them because they use the test strips. Test strips are probably the most unreliable form of water testing. If you want to test it yourself with the actual chemicals that you use to test it in the water testing kit. I know a lot of times at Petco, people who had no idea how to read these tests would do water tests and be like, yep, it says it's okay, when there could be an underlying issue. And if there is an underlying issue, you have to try to figure out what it is. If the ammonia level's high, maybe it's your filter. You know, if the nitrate or the nitrite levels are high, did you just change out the filter media? There's a whole lot of things that go into that. So if you talk to an uneducated person at one of these pet stores, they're not going to be able to help you pretty much with anything.
levels, my nitrate levels, my chlorine levels, and my pH levels are all good. They say no course of action under their number. I believe your pH is supposed to be between 7 and 8 for your African clawed frogs, so we're looking really good
7.6
there.
to
So I
8.
do need to do a 25% water change to help with the hardness, the nitrite levels, and the alkalinity. So we're going to do that real quick. So like I said, I need to do a 25% water change of the water in here. So I'm going to be doing that with this siphon, which is meant
The other
for-
thing with sand is it's extremely hard to siphon it out. Like, whew, it's bad. You siphon up the sand, you just get stuck in there. It's so much easier when it's bare bottom.
fish aquariums, but it'll work perfectly fine in here. So right now we pretty much just have the finishing touches for decoration. So
This
what
music,
I'm going
though.
to do is put everything in it, and then I'm going to be actually gone several days in the next week,
Oh, no.
week and a half. So I
Goodbye.
really want to have everything just cycling and ready for the frog, and not just put them in right away. I want to give the
Good-
plants
good
a
plan.
head start to start growing and kind of get a grasp in the ground. I want them to get their roots firmly into the ground.
They won't
Because
with that
African clawed
sand.
frogs do have very powerful hind legs, so if I put them in immediately...
My personal opinion about live plants is just leave them out of the tank. Your African clawed frogs are going to rip them up, tear them apart, throw them all around, try to eat them. At that point, you might just put fake ones, and I have a lot of fake plants in my tank, and they don't seem to be able to tell the difference. Since the frogs breathe oxygen, it's really not going to do too much for them other than offer some kind of natural aesthetic. I just leave plants out.
The plants are going to be kicked up really quickly, so I want them to be established as much as possible before I put the frog in. Alright, so to start off with decorating, I'm going to take these bags of rocks. I got 2 bags of these black aquarium rocks by Topfin. I got these at PetSmart. They were like $2 a bag, so not
The
too...
other thing to mention is you can help with this whole water issue by washing out the sand and the gravel before you put it in. I'm not sure if she did or not, but usually when you do that, it helps avoid all of this kick up.
bad. What I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put them here in the driftwood for one, to help hold the driftwood down, and then also to give the plants something to kind of wrap their roots into. No! Alright, so the last thing that I got from the pet store is this Anubia.
So I hate these plants. We sold them at Petco. They die extremely fast. Do you know why? Because they're not used to actually being in aquariums, so they have to die off before they can come back. I stay away from these plants as far as possible. If you have a local pet store, I definitely recommend going in the ones that are already submerged. These ones just adapt both ways, but it takes a very long time. The one plant I have in my tank for my Oscar cichlid is one of these plants, one of these Anubiases, and it's fine now, but it has taken me a year at least to be able to make it actually able to survive in water.
This plant, this is by Topfin, and they sell all kinds of different plants. The reason I chose this one is they're recommended for African clawed frogs because they have tough leaves, so hopefully the frog won't tear this apart in 2 weeks. So.
The other thing to be careful about with fake plants in general is you don't want them to be solid plastic because they can cut themselves on it, basically.
I'm going to follow the instructions that are on here for planting this, and then we'll be good to go. So I made the decision to get rid of the sand. It was making the water way, way, way too dirty, and I was not about to have a tank that looked like dirt every day. So I switched out for the rest of the green sand I had, which isn't a ton. But
I wouldn't use the green sand.
You know, keep this going. So nothing's really changed. I went ahead and
it does look nice though. I will give her that.
Along with the Anubias plant. And I'm pretty much just going to let this sit for a week to kind of establish itself. The only thing I have left to add are some little rocks for hiding places.
I'd also probably add a slow filter to it, too.
And just for reference, I did put the Anubias, I kind of stuck it in a little hole that's in the driftwood, so that's what's holding it down, and then hopefully the roots will kind of help secure it for the future.
So with Anubias, they actually hate having their roots planted under sand and gravel, so you have to attach it to something. So I'm glad she did this, but I would also have maybe just tied it to the wood rather than just set it between a couple of rocks. That's just me.
Alright, so that's pretty much the finished tank. Like I said, I'm going to let it sit for a few weeks. I might order a few more plants on Amazon to put in the driftwood. I really would love to have more plants just kind of up, and especially somewhat covering the top. I think that would just make it look really nice.
And also they'll love to hide in it too.
Yeah, so that was pretty much it for today. For the next time you see me, we will probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, be putting the frog into his new home. Ooh, almost forgot to put in the conditioner. That would have been bad.
I mean, if you're waiting a couple of weeks, probably wouldn't matter too much.
Do you see it, buddy? You see it? You like it? Are you excited? The thing about African clawed frogs, they literally just sit there, and sometimes, a lot of times actually, they just look like they're dead, and you're just kind of confused.
So that's very true. If you give them a small enclosure, they won't do too much. But my African clawed frogs actually do like to swim and do jump and climb and play. So I will show you them as soon as we're done with this video, actually.
When you're trying to tell them they're coming to a new place, they're just kind of like...
Yeah, they don't care either way.
So I don't know what he thinks. So for the last day of construction, I decided to clean the tank to get it ready for the frog. Because it had been sitting and been stagnant for about a week, I wanted to clean it to get any ammonia or anything out of the water. So
there wouldn't be any in there if you don't have any plants in there.
I used that to wipe off any algae that might have been on my Anubias plant. I also used it to get the hard water stains and gunk off the sides of the tank. I also went ahead and did a 50 to 75% water change.
Boy, you know, with doing all this work, I don't know if she realizes how messy these frogs are going to be in that 10-gallon tank. You know, like sometimes I try to clean and then I'm like, you know what? You're just going to get it messy again as soon as I put you back in here. So I do water changes and I clean the bottoms, but if you miss a week, they'll be fine.
Water and put in some new fresh water for the frog. Once I had finished cleaning that and putting everything back,
it does look nice. I'll give her that.
To move my frog into this new home. To do this, I just used a little plastic bowl.
Yeah, look at how dirty that is.
Corner him in the side of his tank and get him in there. But once he was in that little container, I went ahead and put him into his.
Yeah, see, they're
home.
messy. The other thing I probably would have recommended too, I know a lot of people don't, but I acclimate before I put them in, so I always put them into a Ziploc bag and let them float for a couple of minutes, probably about 15-20, just to make sure they're perfectly fine before you put them in, just because you never know.
He seems to be loving his new home. He's been hiding under the driftwood a lot. He absolutely loves it. I have seen him recently hiding down in this little cave. He's been out a lot more than he used to be. He used to just be like strictly under the driftwood, but he seems to be warming up to the idea of coming out into the open a little bit. I love this new tank. I think it's a lot more attractive than the last one, and it also makes me enjoy having a frog more because I get to see it more often, and it's just much more interesting this way than in a little tiny tank like this big. So yeah, that's pretty much the construction of my African clawed frogs tank. So that is pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give this video a...
You'll definitely be getting a like from me. So let's recap. Okay, so let's recap. So to start off, she found out that her grow frog kit was actually not the right size for her to house an African clawed frog, which is amazing that she figured that out. Most of the time people don't, and then when they die they wonder what went wrong, and it turns out that they were lied to for the last decade. But it was good to see that she actually took the initiative to do some research, take the frog out of that situation, and put it in a new situation. It looked a lot better. The only improvements I would make is 1, change the food, 2, take the sand out, and then 3, add a filter. Those are the only things I would really change on her setup. A lot of people are like, African cloud frogs get disturbed by the water vibrations of the filter, and I have never seen that. I've been keeping African cloud frogs for about 5 to 6 years now and never had an issue with a filter. I definitely recommend a filter because they are extremely messy animals, so I would definitely recommend that. But let's take a look at my African cloud frogs. Okay guys, so this is my African cloud frog tank. It is a 40-gallon tank. It's on top of Baxter, as you can see here, but the tank is actually really nice for African cloud frogs. It's wider and longer than it is high, so it's perfect for them. I do have my filter over there. I have a couple of frogs in here, as you can see. So that's Big Mama, always prying for food. She's the 8-year-old frog I rescued from Petco. She is absolutely amazing. She's by far my favorite African cloud frog I've ever had. And then we move over here. These are my pizza boxes. This is the African cloud frog I got exactly 1 year ago next week. He's doing really good, and I'll show you the newbie. The newbie is actually hiding under there. There he is. I got him from a manager special at my local pet store because nobody wanted them, and they were trying to get rid of him. So I got him for a couple of bucks, and I thought, you know what, he'd do good with Big Mama. In their tank, they have the fake plants up here. They like to kind of hang out in them. There's also a fake plant over there as well. I added in this driftwood because Big Mama and the other guy, who I don't really have a name for, so if you have a name, leave it in the description down, or the comments down below, like to hide in there. This hammock is really great because Big Mama actually likes to climb up here and kind of just sit up here. It's close. Okay, it's close to the surface, so they really don't have to put too much effort into just hanging out up there. So they really like hanging out up there. I also have this pyramid just as a hive, so they can get in. And you can kind of see the food that they just really didn't want to eat right there. I do feed them these reptile sticks. This is also what I feed my axolotls sometimes too. It's really great for them. I prefer feeding that. I've been feeding that to my African cloud frogs forever now. But I also add in some shrimp periodically into their diet as well. But the filter, as you can see, really doesn't bug them all too much. It's just a nice little drip. I like it. Look at them. Oh, they're so cute. Big Mama. And then, if you guys have a name for the little guy too, leave it in the comments down below. But yeah, this is my African cloud frog setup. I do have live moss in there as kind of just a little extra thing. I hope you enjoyed that look at my frogs. I am going to continue to getting more. I love getting them. I'm going to invest in a grow frog kit and kind of go through the process of growing out a frog, but that is definitely going to be in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you give it a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.